Hey guys, I'm Tim Kotzman here with Soleil. Soleil, how's it going this fine day?
It's going great. I just want to say it's an honor to be here. You know, the studio is amazing. New York City. A little fun fact: my wife is actually from the Bronx.
Oh,
and
really?
So she's a very sweet woman. But just so you know, like if we're out on the street, someone starts a little, physical altercation. You're never going to see her coming. She's like a little tiny Puerto Rican ninja. It's just expect a 2-for-1 because that's what you're going to get.
I love it. I guess that's a great segue into if you want to tell us about your upbringing, your background, and your whole journey to where we are now in Orange Ties.
Yeah, exactly. I knew the assignment. I was ready. When you messaged me and you're like, hey, you want to tell your story? I was like, you're damn right I want to tell my story. So I was kind of like, I love the way you just left it open like that. Like I feel comfortable just saying anything I want. I hope we have time to talk about Microstrategy since it's going through the freaking roof. But I don't know if you watch any hardcore history, but he's like, whenever I want to tell a story, I always have to go like back 100 years. And then I want to go back 100 years and 100 years before that. So my story, I guess, kind of starts with my dad. Like, he's my absolute hero. And it was pretty rough for him and his siblings, growing up. And it wasn't just like, oh, we're poor. Like, parental figures. His biological father was absolutely trash. Stepfather probably wasn't any better. And for me, I don't want to say necessarily I had an idyllic childhood, but like none of that came to me. You know what I mean? That cycle of abuse was just completely disintegrated. So I feel very fortunate about that. And in my bio, it's weird because, I say like, oh, I sell covered calls for a living and I buy Bitcoin with the profits. And some guy commented on one of my videos. He's like, oh, well, you sound really privileged. And I'm like, privileged, yes, to be like surrounded by amazing, intelligent people and, that are trying to succeed and like, yeah, super privileged, but people don't understand, your full story. And even as a kid, like I don't remember any of this stuff. My dad tells me about it. Like, I guess for like a month we're homeless, you know what I mean? And not like sleeping under the stars, but like in a tent, you know what I mean? Type of thing. And so, my dad raised me, and then with the help of my grandmother, my mother left when I was very young. And so to get kind of where I am now, from those kind of beginnings, it does feel like a privilege. And that's kind of like going back maybe a little farther than you were expecting. But I think that I ended up with kind of like 4 moms, really. So I had my biological mother who really wasn't around, which I did meet later, which ended up being pretty cool. Then I had my grandmother, was my first mom. And then I'm actually very lucky with my in-laws because I get along great with them. And so she passed last year, but my mother-in-law was also kind of like my second mom. And like all of my friends ended up, kind of treating me like that was their own kid. And I had a stepmom who was amazing as well. So I just ended up with a bunch of moms, really. But then eventually I ended up in the Navy. And I thought I was going to be a doctor, but that didn't work out so well. My girlfriend at the time was pregnant. And I guess I was of a mindset is like, okay, well, when that happens, you get engaged and you join the Navy. You know what I mean? You figure out a way to take care of your family. Because I was in college and, you don't have your degree, just not really, I have no way to support myself really, except for the frozen yogurt store in the mall. That's where I worked. And unfortunately, like, we break up a year later. And in the custody battle, she requests a paternity test, which came out negative. So that was my first Bitcoin lesson, don't trust, verify. But, all jokes aside, like that's probably,
so
like the most painful thing that's ever happened in my entire life. Like maybe even up there with like, with like my grandmother passing, who was like my second mom kind of thing. That was absolutely brutal. But, it is kind of funny to think about those Bitcoin life lessons. I wish I would have had that 20 years ago. But ended up in the Navy and I'll let you decide. I've got a couple of good Navy stories. Do you want to hear about the waffle butts in Cuba first, or the time that I almost sunk the ship?
I feel like we should go in that order because waffle butts sounds amazing. And then, so let's start there.
Yeah. So my first duty station after school, the Navy trained me to be a medical laboratory technician. And my first duty station was at Portsmouth Naval. And of course, they come around and they're like, hey, does anybody want to volunteer to go to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba for 3 months? And my first mistake was saying, well, what's Guantanamo Bay, Cuba? And as soon as you say anything, if you ask any question, you just volunteered to go there. You know what I mean? Like that's where you're headed. Mm-hmm. So I ended up doing 3 months in Gitmo, was what they call it. And that was during the Cuban migrant crisis. So people were trying to escape Cuba and they're floating over on like homemade rafts and just all kinds of crazy shit. And I think we had Marines that were security, but they were outnumbered at least 4-1 by the number of Cuban migrants that we had. I don't want to say, camps. I don't want to say concentration camps, but it wasn't the greatest life. You know what I mean? We were rescuing them from the ocean. You know what I mean? So they don't drown. We can't send them back to Cuba necessarily because the ramifications for that would probably be not good for them. And they just ended up living in Cuba for quite some time. And so we had a little Navy base down there, and I got sent down for that. And the weird thing about trying to get citizenship in the United States was the rumor. I don't even know if it's true, but the rumor definitely, some people believed it, because if you got pregnant by a service member, the claim was that you could get citizenship. Mm-hmm. And instead of sending you back to Cuba, you'd get sent to Florida. So we had giant, like 10-foot high chain link fences. So some of the Cuban women would actually drop trowel and press their butts to the chain link fence so that service members would hopefully have sex with them and get them pregnant so they get to the U.S., which makes a nice waffle print through the chain link fence. So that's my Guantanamo Bay story. I do have one more for there. I was completely green. I'm fresh out of school. And the first time I actually had to do a cross match for blood, it wasn't just like 1 unit of blood. Oh, we need a unit of blood. It was, we need 10 units. We need 6 for the woman and 4 for her father. There was like a double stabbing in the Cuban camps, side of the camps. And so I just freaked out. I'm like, okay, an hour later, I got this blood ready. I called them and they're like, we don't need that anymore. We medevaced him to Florida. But, I just wiped the sweat from my brow. So that was trial by fire. Yeah. What's next? I think that. Oh, I'm sorry. I got to tell the other Navy story, right?
Yeah.
I got my notes here, but oh shit, that's already gone dark. So hopefully I'm gonna remember everything. So the time that I almost sunk the ship was we were replacing some equipment, and my ship was commissioned in either 69 or 70. So it had like just after the Vietnam era, equipment on it, and this was in 2000. And we're on deployment. And we had replaced the gurney, this 30-year-old gurney, with a new one. And the old one was stainless steel. It took 4 of us to carry it from one deck to the other. And the way that it works out to sea is if you've got trash, you can only throw it overboard at certain times. Now, that's probably shocking in and of itself. But every ship that the Navy has that's out to sea is throwing their paper and food over the side the whole time they're out. So if you think that, Bitcoin wastes power, the environmental impact of proof of war is more than just the cost. But that's the crappy part of the story. The good part is we positioned the gurney to the side of the ship. And instead of going through like the real channels to like get permission to throw it overboard, we just waited till midnight. And there's a double door because you can't open the door to the inside of the ship because then the light will spill out and it'll give away your location. So we positioned it. We opened the outside of the doors and just tossed the damn thing right over the side. And we're kind of like waiting, like 3, 2, 1, like where's the splash? And when we heard the splash, it must have gone in at an angle because after that we just heard this deafening boom. It hit the side of the ship instead of just dropping straight down. and we just about crapped ourselves and hauled ass. And fortunately, the ship didn't sink, and nobody ever figured out that it was us. But I'm sure every single person on the ship heard it.
Can you take us on a journey of your journey to Bitcoin?
Yeah, so Bitcoin, this is kind of another thing that, don't trust, verify is great, but I think humans have gotten to where we are, utilizing heuristics. So you need little shortcuts, right? Because if I roll out of bed in the morning and I stop to verify that the floor exists, it's just too much trouble to verify everything, right? And so at the time I was on Facebook, and I was kind of networking with some other, paranoid crypto anarchists. And one of them was extremely intelligent IT guy, and he starts telling us about Bitcoin. And we already wanted, it would be great to have freedom money. So this is kind of right up my alley. And I kind of just thought, this guy is super smart. He can tell me all about the protocols and the code and all of that crap. And I just kind of went for it. I can't say that I wasn't a degen at first, you want number to go up. And I traded shit coins and all of that stuff for a couple of years. I probably would have, 10 times as much Bitcoin if I hadn't done that. I learned my lesson with that stuff. But I feel like sometimes you just have to take people, if they're intelligent, you kind of just give them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. And you just wait to see them be proven wrong, I think. So I took a little bit of a shortcut to Bitcoin. And I feel like that was the same thing that happened when I saw Quant Bros 1, because I think my superpower isn't necessarily to be the smartest person in the room, but I can definitely tell when I'm in the room with smart people. And when I saw that, I was just like, holy crap, these guys are definitely onto something. You know what I mean? So that was kind of how I got into Bitcoin originally. And we started a Bitcoin Basics Club on Facebook. And my first cold storage was this thing called the Keep Key, which I don't think anybody has ever even heard of. But, I've been in it for a while, but I haven't been truly orange pilled maybe for just the kind of bear market of the last cycle. So this might be the first time that I'm really fully orange pilled going into a bull market. And it's super exciting. And of course, MicroStrategy has just set that excitement level, even higher.
How did you get into options trading?
Yeah, so options trading, another crypto anarchist that I got hooked up with, he ended up being kind of like my business / tax advisor. And he's like, hey, look, I've been studying options, and everybody that I work with has to trade them. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm trading options now. I'm going to learn how to do it. And he had a little trading group on Clubhouse. And since I still had my regular job, I really couldn't attend. So I just went on YouTube, and we were just talking about Tom Sosnoff getting interviewed on Pomp's channel. And that's my guru. I've watched hundreds of videos, maybe 500 hours of Tom Sosnoff trades. And so that was the, that's my options trading tree. You have the NFL coaching trees, this guy coached under this guy. So I guess I'm a Tom Sosnoff disciple. So I listened to that podcast on the way here, and I was just freaking out about it. I was just so psyched. So I guess I'm a disciple of the tasty trade style, and it's all about selling implied volatility when it's high. And I don't know if you've checked MicroStrategy's implied volatility, or it's just volatility in general today, but it's through the frickin' roof. So it's an option seller's dream. And basically I just ended up being self-taught and just watching hundreds and hundreds of hours of these videos like walking the dogs and stuff. You know what I mean? Instead of listening to music at the gym when I'm lifting weights, I'm just listening to podcasts. So that's how I got into it.
Hey guys, today's episode is brought to you by Stampseed. If you're in cold storage, you know how important it is to protect your seed phrase. That's why I recommend you head over to stampseed.com and check it out for yourself. This seed phrase storage device is one solid piece of titanium There are no loose pieces, and you can hammer your seed phrase in letter by letter. When you go to stampseed.com, use promo code TIM15 for a 15% discount across the website. That's TIM15. How is option selling different from buying?
So I've completely kind of flipped my model on its head. All I did was sell options at first, but Quant Bros 1 kind of broke my brain, and I've turned into a huge option buyer since then. But option selling, I look at it kind of like this, and I don't want to say I looked at it from first principles, because I think that's almost kind of like an I win button when people think their ideas are so awesome. They're like, oh, I looked at this from first principles. But the way that I kind of got into it was like, well, the market goes up, at least a little bit over long periods of time. So I do want a bullish strategy. But for the most part, it's kind of just up and to the right, and there's some, black swan events or whatnot, but it's mostly up and to the right. And there are these periods where implied volatility goes sky high, and it makes the options prices high. So someone who's normally long, either with shares or buying calls, they want to buy low and sell high. But the option seller has to sell to open, so he has to sell high and then wait for the implied volatility to drop, or to wait for the price of the option to drop. And then he can buy low. He can buy it to close low. So it's just kind of a little bit of opposite frame of mind. And, a lot of times it doesn't make sense to people, and it's like, well, why would you limit your upside? And before I kind of like really discovered MicroStrategy, I didn't even think that unlimited upside existed. But what happened in March and what's happening, the last couple of weeks is some serious unlimited upside. Like if we're selling covered calls through those times, you missed out on a ton of appreciation. But there can be strategic times when implied vol is so high that it just makes selling those options a little more juicy. And philosophically, I kind of think about it like this. Like, are you familiar with the marshmallow test?
No.
The high time preference.
Oh, yes.
Test?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can actually wait to eat the marshmallow, but I would definitely try if I got 2 marshmallows after 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is.
Exactly.
I would definitely try, but there no guarantees.
No guarantees.
Yeah,
exactly.
The willpower, I'm not sure.
Yep. And so I kind of look at it as that. So if I offered you a different scenario, right? If I offered you 1 marshmallow now or 1 later, like everybody's choosing now. Like, why would I wait for the exact same thing?
Yeah.
And if you own shares and you sell a covered call above your cost basis, you are basically saying, I want my marshmallow now. You can get the marshmallow now. You don't have to wait for the price to go up 10% next week. You can just sell an out-of-the-money covered call at 10%. And if the price gets there, not only do you get to sell at the 10% profit you wanted, but you also get the premium that you were paid on top of it. So I don't know if that's high time preference or low, but it definitely is kind of fronting the profits. And I don't know any other strategy that allows you to do that. You know what I mean? Like you can immediately buy 100 shares and take profits, even though the price of the stock hasn't moved. So there's got to be some power in that. And as long as you don't take that premium and waste it, if you do something good with it that can appreciate, then I think over the long run, it can be a viable strategy. And there's something that I didn't necessarily develop the idea of reinvesting profits. Like everybody knows, okay, if you make profits, you reinvest them and then they can grow more and more in the future. But there's something that I'm pretty sure I came up with this. It's called reaching what is it called when a nuclear explosion takes place and it gets the critical mass? When you reaching
I was going to guess Armageddon. So yeah.
Exactly. I call it reaching critical mass. So if you collect 1% premium when you're selling covered calls, right? That's going to give you enough premium to buy 1 more share. So you could immediately end up with 101 shares, right? You can just use that buying power. And the other person who bought 100 shares and did nothing has 1 less share than you. Now he's got unlimited upside if the price rips, but if it doesn't, you can do it again next week. And now you have 102 shares, and then you have 103 shares the next week. But so if you're reinvesting those profits, eventually you're going to end up with 200 shares. And now you can sell 2 covered calls and you can buy 2 shares a week. If you end up with 10,000 shares of a stock and you collect 1%, now you can buy 100 shares that week and you can now sell an additional covered call. So instead of getting 1% a week, which would be 52% for the year, it ends up being like a compound interest situation. And you could get potentially like 67% returns for the year. So it, you know, that was kind of my goal, was to just get my account so big that I didn't care if it dropped. You know what I mean? Like if I can just get it to be so big that I can just keep buying 100 shares and 100 shares and 100 shares, then even if I can't figure out how to hedge my portfolio during a bear market, I just won't care because it'll still be growing in overall number of shares. Like if MSTR dropped from 500 to 250, obviously my portfolio is going to cut in half. But if I'm buying shares the whole way, at the bottom of that market, I'll end up with more shares than I started with. So that's kind of like my overall thinking with the option selling.
Was your introduction to MicroStrategy through seeing the Quant Bros 1 episode, or what? How did you discover MicroStrategy?
So you remember, was it Moneyball? No, sorry, White Man Can't Jump, when he says like you listen to Jimmy but you don't hear Jimmy. Like I think I listened to MicroStrategy, but I didn't hear it until Quant Bros 1. I considered MicroStrategy just a levered Bitcoin play, right? I knew they had the best premiums, so I loved to trade them. And I would religiously sell cash secured puts or covered calls in them. And the returns that I was getting from them far exceeded any other stock that I had ever traded. But it wasn't really until Quant Bros 1 that I was like, oh crap, this could be something completely different. And maybe unlimited upside really does exist. And it kind of proved the case back in March, because I'm just selling covered calls, right? I had 300 shares pre-split when it was about 500 a share. Selling covered calls, everything was going good until the price was about 1,200 a share. And I sold the 1,400 strikes. That's like 15% out of the money. You know, it has to go up over 15% in 1 week for it to be, to threaten my profits. And it went to 1,700. And so I had to pay $30,000 per covered call in order to not lose my shares. I ended up paying on 2 of the 3, and I let the other 100 shares get called away. So I ended up with less shares after that transaction. And then I was like, oh yeah, like this is for real. Like this can really just get away with you. And if that had happened 2 more times, I wouldn't have been able to afford MicroStrategy at all. You know what I mean? Like all my shares would have been called away, and I would have just been left with, whatever I had left over, which would have been in profit. So that's great. But I wouldn't be able to participate in the extreme run that's happening now. So I was definitely aware of it, but not fully aware of its potential.
Tell us about your journey to the MSTR True North group.
I wish, like, if it feels like a dream, really, because I mean, I just feel like I'm just a guy, a self-taught options trader, and I'm actually terrified of public speaking. So like I'm literally sweating bullets right now. But so this is kind of a leap for me as well. And I just decided, you know what, if I'm going to make content, I'm just going to make a video a day. And I got, after maybe a month of that, I thought, okay, I can actually just turn the camera on and talk for half an hour. So I got to that point where I felt comfortable. And after almost a year of a video a day, I had just hundreds of videos. And I guess I covered MicroStrategy one day, that Quant Bros. I was like, I freaked out about it, and I had to immediately cover it, in one of my videos. And I don't know if just that body of work, or maybe we're just back to proof of work again, I had just put in a bunch of work, made a ton of videos, and then covered their episode. And I guess they saw it and just somehow got noticed. But when they asked me to participate, I was just like, there's no way this is happening. Like I get to actually just rub elbows with these brilliant people. I have to feel like I have to pinch myself, I might have to wake up from a dream.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, when you hear Ben Workman or Punter Jeff or Ryan or Adrian or Dan,
Exactly.
or you just go down the entire
Every single
list,
person,
and you're just like, oh, that either reinforces. So sometimes it's better to be reminded than instructed, or most of the time it's like, oh, I either haven't thought of that yet, or it's a different way of thinking about it, or I have no experience in that. It's great to just learn something new.
For
either
sure.
a new, like all new information and like a new bucket per se, or just another perspective. It's just kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, and it's insane that, I'm a native option seller, and some of these guys have never sold to open. And then we've got, guys that are still studying and trying to graduate. And we've got the quants, and everybody's got their own perspective, but they've all still came to the same conclusion. Like everybody took a different path to the same conclusion, that this is just a life-changing opportunity. So it's amazing.
What's your outlook on kind of the broader aspects of life, inspiration and aspiration?
Yeah, I put together a couple of quotes, and one of my favorites, I think I'm going to be able to realize this very soon. It was from Jim Carrey, and I might butcher it a little bit, but it was something along these lines. You can fail doing what you don't love, so you might as well do what you love, because you just have a decent enough chance to. You can fail at either one, but you might as well fail doing what you love. And so, earlier this year, I started making as much trading options as I was at my W-2 job. So it kind of made me work optional. And since 6 months ago, my portfolio is probably 5x from there. So time is ticking. Like I don't know how much longer I can continue to clock in, but it's going to be great to just be able to do what I love. And I'm a bit of a gamer, kind of have an addictive personality, and trading in the stock market just feels like a video game. You're trying to get high score all the time. But I love that quote from Jim Carrey. And this one kind of, I think, backs me up as far as the covered call selling. So my favorite book is Catch-22. And the main character, Yossarian, is a pilot. And he's complaining to his buddy, like everyone's trying to kill me. Like the Germans are trying to kill me. My superiors are trying to kill me. They keep sending me out here, running all these missions. And he's like, I don't want to do it anymore. And the guy was like, well, what if everybody thought like that, And Yossarian was like, well, if everybody thought like that, I'd be a damn fool not to, right? And I kind of think about that with the way that Saylor is running the Microstrategy playbook. I mean, he's literally selling Microstrategy shares because they're trading at a multiple, and then he's buying Bitcoin with it. And I kind of feel like I'm running that in my own way. I'm selling covered calls against MicroStrategy when the implied vol is high, when there's an advantage to do so. And then I'm buying more MicroStrategy with it. So I might buy it at a farther out a date, like a leaps or something. So I'm selling vol under 45 days, and I'm buying vol a year from now. And usually when we're thinking about how likely something is to happen, we know it's going to happen today or tomorrow. Like the weatherman knows approximately whether we're going to get a 50% chance of rain tomorrow. But they don't even try 2 weeks from now. I don't have a clue 6 months from now. But I feel like MicroStrategy is the reverse, and it's probably because it's a derivative of Bitcoin. Like I know number go up for Bitcoin for as long as I'll be alive. So I don't mind, flipping a coin on short-term volatility when I know 100% in the future I can buy long vol a year from now, and I know there's number go up by that time. Like I feel like I'm giving myself enough time to be right in that scenario.
Where can people find you on the internet? Are there any resources that you use that you'd like to tell others about that you think would be super helpful to them, and just any closing thoughts that you might have?
Sure. On X, I'm at Nithu Sezni, and I do have a YouTube channel. I believe it's the same handle, but I'm kind of hoping YouTube goes out of business because of the censorship shenanigans they had during the virus that shall not be named. But yeah, so I'm really hoping X just kind of takes over that whole space. They got some work to do on the video area, but that's how I can be, connected with, is on X primarily. And sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Oh, just if there's any resources that you might recommend to others, and then any closing thoughts.
Yeah, obviously anybody who's watching this is probably already watching all the Quant Bros stuff. Following on MSTR True North on X. There's the Irresponsibly Long Microstrategy community on X, and the MSTR Den on Discord. Those are all great resources. For option selling, I already mentioned Tasty Trade's platform. All of their videos, all of their research is top notch. They backtest everything. They're not messing around with that. And then the YouTuber that I watched just tons and tons of videos on was this young kid named In the Money, and he has an excellent YouTube channel, Options Beginners, for Robinhood and Webull and just all of these different, who goes over the Greeks, and his style of teaching just is either my style of learning, but he just seems like an amazing teacher. So both of those are excellent option selling resources. And you can learn the option buying stuff somewhere else. I don't know where to find that, but maybe on the Quant Bros channel.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all of your time and being in studio today. And we'll have to do this again.
It's an honor. Thank you, sir.